Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the Tavor X95. So the Tavor is actually a gun that I've had on my radar for some time now, but never really got around to purchasing. Mainly because there were other guns out there that I was prioritizing, but eventually reached a level of bullpup curious that was high enough for me to justify picking one of these things up. And overall, really glad that I did. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So out of the box, the Tavor X95 does come with one Magpul PMag. It also comes with two cutie sling mounts. Also does have integrated rear and front iron sights. To be honest, I don't really plan on ever using these, but I guess I'm glad that they're there. And you can access the rails on either side of the forend as well as on the bottom of the forend by removing these rail covers, giving you access to the rails to mount lasers, lights, foregrips, whatever it is at your heart's content. So let's go ahead and talk about what I like about the X95. And to kick things off, it's definitely going to be just inherent to the bullpup design, the fact that you get a 16-inch barrel in a pretty short and maneuverable platform. As a matter of fact, if we look at the Tavor compared to my AR pistol here, which has a 10.5-inch long barrel, and we compare lengths, you can see that the AR pistol definitely has a considerable amount of length compared to the Tavor. So the fact that you get such a long barrel while maintaining a pretty small platform is a huge win for the Tavor. Now the second thing I really do like about the Tavor X95 is the weight distribution. It's definitely not a light gun, it's actually pretty heavy, but because a lot of the weight, or almost all the weight, is concentrated in the back here, I actually find it much easier to shoulder and run the gun for longer periods of time without fatigue, as opposed to an AR-15 where all the weight's going to be in the front with rails and attachments and accessories and whatnot. So even though the gun is definitely not light, I found that I was able to run the gun for a pretty long period of time without getting too tired. Something else that I really appreciate about the X95, like I already mentioned at the beginning, it does take standard AR-15 magazines, and it shoots the same round as the AR-15, which means that finding mags and ammunition is going to be relatively easy, which in this day and age definitely means a lot. And the one last thing I do like about the X95 is that from a manual of arms standpoint, it is a significant improvement over its predecessor, the SAR. Specifically, I like the fact that IWI gave the X95 a AR-style magazine release as opposed to the original SAR mag release being located right here by the bolt catch. I find that this is far more intuitive. Both the mag release as well as the fire selector are nice and big, so they're easy to interface with. And from a function as well as placement standpoint, they're pretty much identical to the AR. So I found that transitioning between the two platforms was relatively seamless. So overall, I find the gun to be balanced. It definitely feels maneuverable. You get a lot of barrel, like I said, in a pretty short platform. I personally found the manual of arms to be pretty intuitive, and overall I feel like I shoot the gun pretty naturally. So can't say that I'm upset about this purchase at all. So now let's talk about some things that I don't particularly like about the X95. Number one has got to be the big hump right here on the stock grip. Just not really sure why IWI put that there. I find it to be pretty uncomfortable. Also, not a huge fan of the stock charging handle. Feels kind of cheap, to be honest with you. And not sure if it's because the gun hasn't been broken in fully yet, but it also just doesn't feel as smooth. It feels kind of grimy. So not sure, like I said, if that's a break-in issue or if it's something that can be fixed, but these are two things that I noticed pretty early on, right out of the gate, that I was not a huge fan of. Something else I wanted to note was the trigger. The trigger is definitely not great. It's not unacceptably bad, but the take-up does feel kind of long, and the wall and the brake have a spongy feeling to them. And I get it, that's kind of inherent to the bullpup design in general. I can obviously work around it, but I can see why people would take issue with it, especially when you consider how much this thing costs. It's not an inexpensive gun. So even though it is relatively inexpensive when you compare it to other bullpups, for how much you are paying for this, I would have preferred, or I would have hoped, for a slightly better trigger. And there are sort of two universal complaints that people tend to have about the X95. Number one is definitely going to be the gas. This rifle is definitely on the gassier side, especially if you compare it to something like an AR. I personally didn't notice a huge issue with any gas blowing in my face when shooting this thing, but then again, I wasn't shooting the gun suppressed. I can presume that if I did throw my suppressor on here, the issue would be a lot worse. There are ways to rectify that, which I do plan on doing in the future, but again, that's just kind of one of the stipulations and one of the concessions you're going to have to make if you do plan on picking one of these guns up. And the second issue that people tend to take with the X95 is accuracy. The general consensus is that the X95's accuracy is subpar when compared to other platforms. I'm probably not the best person to confirm that, just because I've only ever shot the gun at 25 yards. And plus, at my stage in training, the gun's probably still more accurate than me anyway. But there are definitely very skilled shooters out there who can confirm that accuracy is probably not going to be the X95's strong suit. And if that's going to be a deal breaker for you, then that's totally understandable. But me personally, I was willing to make that trade-off because I wanted what the X95 had to offer. And, you know, I'm well aware this gun's not going to be a 1 MOA gun, and I don't really think I need it to be a 1 MOA gun. I have other rifles that fill that space. This is really just going to be yet another tool for me to have at my disposal. So overall, guys, really happy with the X95 so far. Do like what it has to offer. There definitely are some valid criticisms and drawbacks to be aware of, but if you're in the market for a bullpup, I definitely think it's a platform that's worth exploring, especially considering what you do get for it. So that's going to be my review on the X95. Hope you guys enjoyed. I do have some other videos that I plan to release real soon, but until then, see you next time.